lose myself. Everything.
Welcome to another episode of Modern Life. Today we are talking about The Last of Us 2. And before we get going, just want to let you guys know you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Modern Life Pod, and you can also email us with show suggestions or feedback. The email is modernlifepod@gmail.com. So let's get into it. I am joined today by Tabby.
Hello.
And Stacy.
Hello.
And yeah, we're talking about, for better or for worse, The Last of Us 2. And because this is a 25-hour to 40-hour game, and there is so much to talk about, we are going to skip the modern thoughts today and dive right into it.
Yeah, just a quick description.
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest listening to this podcast if you haven't played it.
Oh yeah, there's going to be major spoilers.
The Last of Us 2, of course, is a sequel to The Last of Us, which is a character-driven apocalypse survivor game. But the zombies are very secondary to Joel and Ellie, who are our main characters, and we follow them on their journey to try and find a cure for the zombie apocalypse. In the second game, Joel gets killed off, and then we follow Ellie around to try and get revenge for his death.
Yeah.
Something I really loved about the second game is as soon as it started up, you got to the accessibility screen. I've never seen that be the first thing that pops up so that people with disabilities don't have to fight their way through a default menu to make the game playable for them. And it really, I think we're starting to think of games less in terms of just difficulty grades and start to examine colors and movement, motion sickness and sound and ways that I think all games should be doing.
Well, there definitely seems to be a move towards that because it was about a year, maybe 2 years ago. I don't know if you remember, Microsoft came out with a whole series of special controllers just for people with disabilities. These would be controllers with huge buttons so they're easier to press, all kinds of stuff like that. There seems to be a movement to make games just as accessible to everybody as possible, which
really
is great.
lovely.
And I've never seen that. You can change the size of the subtitles, you can change the color of the subtitles. There's so much customizable stuff just as far as that goes, which I don't know if I've ever... maybe there is one out there. I've never seen it in a game before. It was definitely unique.
Not one this big, I don't think.
A blockbuster game like this, yeah.
So that was really, really cool. And then the game starts you off with these amazing visuals, too. I mean, you've got the shot of these golden fields and this mountain range, and you're like, is this a game? Because this looks insane. When you're on the horse with Joel, and something I noticed throughout the game is the light animations and just the effects of light coming through trees, or that room with the pink curtain where Tommy tortures those people, or the red atmospheric light in the subway when you're fighting the zombies down there. It's just the effect of light is just incredible and really improves on the first game as well.
And obviously we'll get to the story and the characters and all that, but if we're just talking about from a technical standpoint, the game is, it's as good as you can have it. Just the lighting, the graphics, the flow of the game, which is just something Naughty Dog has totally nailed since, I want to say Uncharted 4, where there's no loading screens. Everything is so seamless. Just the whole flow of the game and these action scenes to where it feels like half movie, half game, and it sucks you into the game so much more, the fact that there's no interruptions at all.
Well, if you look at it from my standpoint, I didn't even play the game. I just watched.
And screamed.
Because there was quite a bit of jumping out.
Stacy scared me more than the game.
Yeah, it's visually, it's absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
Naughty Dog has just mastered this, where you're playing it and all of a sudden, shit hits the fan and you're in this... It's like this interactive cutscene almost, but it so pulls you into the action and the way they do the camera angles, and it's just, it gets your heartbeat racing.
It's breathing.
Yeah. And it's almost, it's spoiled me at this point because they do it so well. And when I tried to, half a year ago, I tried to play that new Tomb Raider game, which is like a poor man's Uncharted. And they tried to do what Uncharted does, but then you have as soon as it gets into the kind of one of these action cutscenes, you have this like 5-second black loading screen before anything happens, and it totally pulls you out of the game. But that's such a new thing that we're able to make these seamless transitions, you know, as far as the technical aspect
it has to do
goes.
with the directing, because the load screens in Naughty Dog games are the cutscenes. So you have to place your cutscenes in a way that allows all that loading to occur.
Right.
It has to be the right length for the cinematics. That so much goes into it that I don't know if some of these other studios have the time to invest in.
Right, well, you have the time, also the money, and I don't know all the technical aspects behind that. Obviously, I don't know if there's certain game engines that can do that compared to others that can't. I don't know what all goes into that, but Naughty Dog has definitely mastered the art of that.
Yeah, just come back to that that action directing. That's something I noticed right away when that chain link fence is coming down on you and you're playing as Abby.
Yeah, like
and
towards
then,
the beginning.
Oh man, you're just trying to crawl away from them, trying to grab you, and then Joel shoots one of them, and you hear that shot like ringing in her ears.
Yeah,
and it just you're so in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the other action scene with the car chase. I think we loved so much when you're in the car with Jesse and you're. Man, you just want to scream the whole way through.
Terrible driver. They're really missing. They're missing the DMV in the apocalypse.
Oh man,
we steal this car and he gets maybe half a mile before tanking the thing into a lake. But just to kind of go further on the whole technical aspect of the game. I mean, the voice acting, right? It's like amazing.
Yeah. What is there to say?
I don't know. It's like speechless. The sound design, all these little things you hear in the background to kind of add ambiance to the scary parts of the game.
One detail I wrote down was the sound of the guitar scraping against the felt case when you pick it out is such a specific sound, and even to think of putting that in there, I was like these little things just blew me away.
Props to the Foley department.
Yeah.
But you'd be in like a dark skyscraper or house and just looking through drawers, and all of a sudden in the distance you hear like a can getting knocked over, or something like that, and then it adds this like, oh shit, like is there like a zombies, like, and then you check and like you don't see anything, but it totally just nailed the ambiance of that. And just the voice acting is just, it's amazing.
And also the human mannerisms, you can't even describe them as idle animations anymore because they're so lifelike. Like Ellie fixing her hair, or Abby is rubbing her shoulders, and like Abby's face contorting when she's choking someone out. Like it's just so...
Yeah, you would stab some NPC and just the sound of them like choking on their own blood. Oh yeah,
that was a good sound.
It's insane. And I know from what I've read, for some people that was like overkill, and we'll get to the violence of the game, but just how real the sound is. But to me, I didn't have a problem with that. I was honestly just amazed at the technical feat of this game.
Just another effect I had written down, when Ellie cuts through the garden in Seattle and we are exposed to the scars for the first time, and you're surrounded by these ferns, and it's this overgrown Seattle area, and they're coming at you with these torches and you don't quite know what's going on.
Yeah.
Just the entire environment of that combined with the design of the enemies, that was one of my favorite parts, where I thought, oh, that is really well done and really scary, and like, who are these people? And
No, totally.
Another thing that contributes to that is Gustavo Santaolalla. I hope I said that right. He is the same composer as the first one. His music is so atmospheric. It has gentle guitar sounds, but then also this Christopher Nolan type tension music. And I want to say the soundtrack is even better than the first one, because the first one fits really well in the game. And this one I just want to listen to like when I'm in the car, or like, it's just incredible.
Yeah, and well, more specific, I guess, more Hans Zimmer influenced. All the Nolan movies, just these like, I don't even know. He messes with all these synthesizers. I just thought of the tension of a Nolan movie, and like, it's like this lingering thing that just keeps
Very cool.
ramping up and adds to the tension. I don't even know. I guess it's just messing around with synthesizers.
Another thing I had a question about actually was people are talking a lot about the rope mechanics, which they've improved from
Yes.
Uncharted and being able to throw the rope. And then I realized that I think Abby's hair is also part of the rope mechanics, isn't it? Because her hair is
would
this
imagine
long
so.
braid and it has these like frizzy things coming out of it and it moves around. It's not just like a stick that, it's
Right.
like hanging out of her head or
Right.
something like that. And
No, everything is totally alive in the game.
Yeah.
There's nothing that stood out to me where like even the leaves on the trees, which is usually just an afterthought in games where they're just kind of these flat,
right.
like there's nothing that kind of took you out of the game. I mean, you could tell they put a lot of thought into this and just like every detail was thought out. Yeah, no, it's amazing from a technical standpoint. There's just nothing else you can say. It's about as perfect as it gets. I didn't really encounter any glitches. Everything is...
I had one glitch. That's
Oh,
it.
your game froze like one
Yeah,
time.
that's it. Yeah.
I didn't have that problem, but it's just so incredibly polished, which is how it should be if you're paying $60 for a blockbuster game and not these things where games are released early and it's like, well, we're going to update it in a month and fix the glitches.
Yeah, and I think we both also thought that taking all these parts from Uncharted 4, like the climbing and the jumping and the rope, felt more like a natural evolution. It didn't feel reductive. It didn't feel like, oh, am I playing Uncharted now? It felt like they were meshing things together that fit really well for the gameplay for this game.
Yeah. No, but you can tell you're in that Naughty Dog universe because there's certain little sound effects that are interchanged, like when the speech bubble comes up, right?
Oh,
like
you're
that's the same
right.
noise in
Yeah.
both games, and I don't know, it gave me a weird sense of comfort to hear these sounds where I'm like, oh, I'm in this Naughty Dog universe where these games are just really polished and playable, and like, I don't know, this weird relationship to this game developer through using kind of some of the same stuff throughout the two totally different games.
And you also really love them taking the Jeep and the open world aspect and then turning that into the horse, and you have the map, and there's so many different approaches to a battle that just weren't possible in Last of Us 1.
But yeah, as soon as we were in Seattle and you have the map and your horse, I'm like, oh, this is the Jeep scene from Uncharted 4.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna like get to explore around for a minute. It's this like semi-open world part of the game, which is kind of nice from just the totally linear the rest of the game, right?
Didn't think that map would be a downfall, would ya?
Oh my god! Yes, it is. You want to dive more into the characters, the story?
Yeah, I think a good place to start is maybe Joel's death.
Right, so that's the biggest twist in this game early on that people were not expecting, right? So Joel dies within like 20 minutes of playing the game, maybe the first hour.
Yeah, and I think somebody also pointed out that he's one of PlayStation's most recognizable characters, and he's pretty much like a cash cow. So killing him off is like, Nintendo wouldn't kill off Mario.
Right.
Like,
the first Last of Us 2 was released fairly early on with the PlayStation 4 launch, right? Or like not maybe a couple years into it.
It came with my PlayStation 4. I remember that.
It wasn't the launch game, I don't think, but it came...
Didn't they remaster it?
They remastered it too, but it was fairly early on in PlayStation 4, and it was such a masterpiece of a game that it makes sense that, like Joel is this... I don't know, for some reason more than Ellie almost. He's just this really recognizable character. So some people were incredibly pissed off that he gets killed off.
I played this part on Father's Day, and I cried for about an hour. People were so angry at Abby, and that really surprised me. Because the game shows you in the beginning, like, Joel's not a good person.
Right.
We kind of know she's probably with the Fireflies. Like, the whole thing with her dad, that wasn't a big reveal to me.
Interesting. Like, you knew something was linked there?
Yeah, same with you, Stacy, right? Yeah, you hadn't even played the first game. No. So.
Yeah, but you didn't know that until the dad is introduced. Am I crazy?
So when you first get that flashback, you're back at the zoo, and I'm like, oh, this is the zoo from the first game. Like, so she's part of the Fireflies, and her dad, I guessed, was the surgeon because that was the first thing we're shown in the beginning of this game.
You guys are so damn smart.
But I think...
I didn't connect those dots right.
You rarely connect those dots, let's be honest.
And I think when they talk to each other and save the zebra and then they run out and there's the St. Mary's Hospital in the background, I feel like that was a moment for people when they were like, well, wait a minute. Like,
Hold on a minute.
they didn't put anything together until that part.
That's okay, though.
No, I'm just saying that I feel like the anger was completely misdirected and also misses a lot of really excellent storytelling things that they did with Joel's death. Because Abby's there to kill him, and then he saves her and you think, okay, maybe she'll change her mind now, right? Because you have that whole part of Joel and Tommy saving her, and also then you switch perspective to Ellie approaching the house, and the game even makes you pick up supplies, like it's gearing up for this big battle and you get to save Joel, and none of that happens, and I thought that was so clever, and also filming that scene from the ground up, so as if you're playing as Ellie. That was another really interesting thing that really brings you into that scene and makes you feel it, and having the voices fade out because she's so overcome with emotion and you're overcome with emotion playing it. And then going through his house, like that was another like punch in the gut, like picking up all the little things, and her idol animations are like wiping her eyes and crying, and then you kind of forget about your journal, and then you open it up and you see her having, trying to draw him, and you're like, you're like crying all over again. So I think Abby is one part of that, but I wasn't feeling anger. I just was feeling this deep emotion because the game did so many smart things to make me feel that. And then the game tries to do that for the last 2/3, like, oh, this meaningful death, let's do that 20 more times. It kind of like didn't work for me.
And we will get to that. The game early on just keeps making the point and keeps trying to remind you that Joel is not that great of a person, and what he did at the hospital in the first game was pretty damn shitty, like killing doctors and stuff. And that his death on some level is totally justified.
His death was well done. I just don't know if the rest of the story makes it meaningful.
What I want to get to is I just think it's weird that people can't see that Joel's not a good person, and then they get so angry that he's dead and then leave like a 0 score on Metacritic. It's just so silly that it's this like cult thing of, no, I like that character and I don't like that you killed him off and I hate this game because of that. Like that you can't move on from that.
It's very mature.
Worrisome.
Yeah. You talking about him killing all those doctors It brings me to something about earning character moments. Because the first game like this one is not a choice game. It does not ask my morality, but it does ask my empathy. Right. And the second game tried so hard to do that over and over, and it completely missed the mark for me. So Joel saving Ellie is this really upsetting and conflicting moment. So when you're playing it, Stacy, like, you wake up in the hospital and Marlene's like, oh, you have to be escorted out of here because Ellie, we have to sacrifice her to save the human race. And then you decide to kill all these people. And the first time I played it, I felt so like ill, like, oh, this is like, because it's wrong and you feel that it's wrong. But the game has just spent like the entire game basically, you know, justifying why for Joel as a character, this is the only choice he could have made. Through losing his biological daughter and now losing his adoptive daughter, the game earns that moment of me feeling really unsettled because it did the work. And I feel like this game often didn't do the work.
I mean, I haven't watched the first game being played, but like from a parent perspective, I would have done exactly what Joel did. Right. So the confliction that you have, I have none of that. And maybe that makes me a bad person, but like, I not even second guessed it. I would have done exactly what he did, like to save my child.
And it's not the right thing, but it's like you're reacting from the point of a parent, and that is the point of the game.
Right.
And well, the problem I had with it is that, and you seem to like not have that, is that there was no choice by her. Like,
and no one ever asks her in the first game.
Yeah,
like,
no,
what do you want to do?
I know, and I know you don't have a problem with that, but I do, because it should be her choice if she's going to die for that. And I don't know, maybe that's like some ethical thing for me. She should have the right to decide that.
Or even if it's not a choice, like, nobody gives her the chance to even like say goodbye to Joel.
Like, just nothing. Like,
even if you're going to force the death of this girl, like, give her a chance to like say goodbye.
But that,
or, like,
so just to remind you from the first game, because Marlene does say, you know, that if she had a choice, she would do this. And then in the second game, Ellie's like, this is what I wanted. Like, I wanted to sacrifice myself. So you didn't know this from the first game.
No,
but
I saw that playback because there was a memory of it. But I still like, it's different when you're in that moment and you're getting to decide later, having had someone else made that decision for you. It's easy to say, oh, I would do it. But it's just the fact that these people think that they can do it without asking permission to do it. And if there's an ethical thing there for me, it's like, even if it's better, because they have no proof of one, that this is going to work.
Yeah, that's something you talked about.
I kept bringing up, there's no discussion about how kind of vaccines or cures work, where there's really, I mean, we're going through it right now, right? We're trying to get this vaccine for the coronavirus, and there's just no, first of all, guarantee that a vaccine works. And you have to go through all these trials.
And they keep saying Abby's dad is a surgeon. They never say he's a virologist, yet they keep saying he's the only one who can do this, which isn't true from the first game, because Marlene tries to get Ellie back even after that guy is killed. So that's something they changed for the story.
So there's totally a scenario where you try to make a cure and it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
And that's kind of never
discussed.
Which...
Yeah.
You know.
I don't know. I just have ethical issues with that too.
Yeah.
So I don't, from the get-go, the whole like thinking the doctor's like such a good person, like I don't really think that he's such a good person. Because I
don't think he thinks he's a good person.
Okay.
And he struggles with it too, but that's kind of, so if we talk about the characters in this game, that is one of the main points here, is that nobody is a perfect good person. Everyone kind of lives in this gray area, and there's no, especially in this apocalyptic world, there are no perfect choices, and all the choices have consequences, and what the right choice is kind of depends on whose shoes you're standing in. But that is one thing I really appreciate about the game, where all these characters are kind of allowed to be just normal, flawed human beings, and it's not this, here's the good guy versus the villain, like stereotypical video game thing. Everyone is allowed to live in this gray area, which...
Actually, I think there's one evil group in the whole thing that take the
obviously.
evil to the next level, and it's that last group that you didn't get to fight.
Stacy's talking about the slavers, which I thought at that point was just so exaggerated for the sake of violence, and I just didn't have a reaction to it, because I was like, okay, this is just getting really silly.
Right, but let's talk about how we got there. So, and to kind of go back to the beginning of the game, the whole empathy thing totally worked on me in kind of the first third to half of the game. You have to play Abby, who kills Joel, and at first I hated playing her, and the more you're kind of in her shoes and you get to hear her side of the story, then I totally, not that I side with her, but I definitely am empathetic to her situation, right? And the first half of the game, to me, there's so much complexity in the characters and their situations and the world we're in this town of Jackson, and there's all these relationships and so many more characters. It's this really complex, well-written world, and then the game about halfway through just turns into like Rambo meets Roadhouse, where it's just this revenge, violence, fetish trip, and all that complexity is lost, especially when... towards the end, before you go to Santa Barbara to track down Abby one last time, like Tommy comes to the house and he's like, I've been putting out some feelers and I think Abby's in Santa Barbara. And Dina and Ellie are like, I don't know about this. Like, we have our family here. We have this kid. We have this farm. And then it just turns into these cheesy one-liners towards the end of the game where Tommy's like, well, I can't go because he's like all injured. Or like in the final fight between Abby and Ellie, which is like so drawn out and ridiculous.
I would have turned it off at that point. I didn't want to be exposed to that anymore. We didn't have to do the podcast.
Well, even just a few lines I wrote down, like when Ellie is leaving the farmhouse and Dina's confronting her, and Ellie's like, what did she say? She has to...
I can't sleep.
No, I wrote it down, right? She's like, I have to finish it. Or like towards, at the very end, the last fight where Ellie's looking at Abby and she goes... I can't let you leave. It's just turned into these like 80 movie one-liners, and all this complexity and nuance is totally lost.
I did love Stacy's though. Oh yeah, you can't sleep. I have a fucking toddler, man.
She hasn't slept for 2 years, and she won't be able to for at least another year.
I got one last job to do.
Da, da, da. So somebody, and I forget which article, I've read so many articles trying to get different viewpoints of this game, and somebody made a really good point where it's made pretty clear early on in Ellie's and Dina's relationship that Dina has been just as much through all this horrific shit as Ellie has. And because they're comparing, like, when's the first time you killed somebody? And I'm pretty sure Dina killed someone earlier than Ellie,
And
right?
she lost her sister.
Yeah, she's been through just as much horrific stuff, and none of that is kind of mentioned again towards the end of the game, where Dina's just reduced to this, the only sane person, angry housewife character who's yelling at Tommy to be like, "Don't you come back here!" And it's...
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and I didn't either until somebody pointed out there on the internet.
Yeah, no, but you said at the end of the game, like, wait, what about Dina? Like, the game doesn't even allow you to care about these 20 million characters.
Like, the one character that's left alive, Dina, like, the only really other person you're able to care about, like, just totally disappears. I'm like, it's just focusing on Ellie's revenge trip and her PTSD, and it's like, well, Dina just had a kid, and she's been through just as much shit. All this building you did is thrown away.
Kid lost its dad on this revenge trip. It's really frustrating.
Yeah.
Dina never really brings up in the confrontation before Ellie leaves that it's like, from what I can tell, Ellie's kind of made a commitment to raise this kid. They have this farm together. That is never really brought up, how she just abandons Dina.
Ellie's no longer allowed to be a fully fledged character outside of Joel. And Jess Joho, she wrote for Mashable the review, I don't quite remember the name, but we'll have it linked. And she calls this the paternal gaze, where Ellie does not get to respond to the world around her as like a community member, as a niece, as a wife, as a mother. It just turns her into this one-dimensional, lifeless character writing.
Yeah, Rambo.
It's just too bad, really.
Well, it's her and Tommy all of a sudden at the end of the game. It's like just these totally one-dimensional characters. I'm
well,
like,
that's the
what
part
happened?
I had a problem with, like the Tommy,
No
the whole
sense,
Tommy
yeah.
conversation, because I don't even know him from the first game, but I already could tell that just didn't work.
Yeah.
Like it felt like he would never have said that. He would never have reacted like that.
He's a complete dick to Ellie all of a sudden.
It didn't work for me.
And it didn't even make sense because earlier on in the game, he's the one who's saying they have to go back to Jackson because Dina's pregnant and, you know, we killed all of Abby's friends and it's okay that we can let her go. And now he comes back later and he's just cursing out Ellie and telling her what a piece of crap she is for not wanting to abandon her family and go to Santa Barbara.
Yeah, suddenly it's like whack Uncle Tommy who like gets a divorce and has this like spy network out there in the apocalypse tracking down Abby. And I'm like, what happened? Because like it doesn't even make sense in this game, but just thinking back to the first game, you miss your connection with the Fireflies because you are a smuggler, you have to drop off the goods, which is Ellie. You find out it's like a person, right? And so you're like, my brother used to be a Firefly, he'll know what to do. You find Uncle Tommy and he lives in this community and he has like a wife and he's like, no, like I'm done with that life. Like I have to protect, like, and then you even have a level defending the community from these like people coming in. And this, so you tell me that Uncle Tommy has just gone like bananas?
Well, yeah, that and like, isn't this like the same guy in the like scene before that we've seen him is like literally being like, kill me over her.
Right,
like, and now it's like, oh no, you have to go because I can't because I'm injured and you might die, but that's not a problem for me. It's like there's like no emotional like.
No, it makes no sense.
Where's Jackson? What state are they in?
I think we said Wyoming.
Yeah, okay, so she's gonna, in this apocalyptic world with danger on every corner, Tommy wants Ellie to go from Wyoming to Santa Barbara by herself. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
It just feels artificially long, the game. It doesn't feel organic towards the end.
No, that's why I didn't have a reaction to anything happening in the last
Well, I
part.
didn't... Right, and we also don't have a reaction because it's like any character building is wasted because everybody dies and there's nothing to care about.
It's also like the way you first play Ellie like for the first part and you like watch all of like these people. Oh no, you first play Abby for a little while and you watch like all these people die. Or no, I think it's Ellie.
You play Ellie and you kill like half of Abby's friends.
And then you play Abby and you're introduced to these people and we're supposed to have emotion for them, but we've already watched them die. So it's I can't really build emotion for somebody that like I know is going to die because it's like, what's the point? Like, it's not human nature to like care about them. And then you have no feeling the entire time you're like having this second part. And then you also don't have any feeling because you're watching Abby. You're supposed to like this person enough to like care about her friends, right?
I don't know if you're supposed to like her. You're just supposed to be empathetic to her.
my problem is that like she has no problem turning on all these people that she was like with, but she guns them all down.
I understood that. But everything else you said, I basically wrote down that same thing. Because people were suggesting online, would this be less jarring as a story if you played one day at a time? So you played Seattle Day 1, Ellie Abby, and then Seattle Day 2. Because I didn't actually have a problem playing as Abby, but I'm like, same as you, I'm like, you want me to get attached to all these people that I know I'm gonna die. So basically, all you're doing is framing Abby's story through the trauma that Ellie is inflicting on her. And that becomes the whole 2/3 of the game. It's like more trauma, you know, and Abby, you're seeing her explore like her community there in the same way we saw Ellie explore Jackson. But like Stacy said, there's nothing I can feel about that. Like I can't just care about Ellie and Abby as the only two characters when you have all these other characters there. And then you
that are more likable. This is my thing. Like some of the characters were way more likable, but then like I know they're gonna die. And,
right. And then finally you meet the siblings and you're like, okay, so are these the two characters I'm allowed to care about?
Right.
And then you spend like 10 hours or like 5 hours trying to save this girl from her like broken arm. And the game is like, oh no, psych. Like, we're going to kill her off too.
Right after
and I'm
she's
like,
healed, it's like she dies.
What?
Yeah, it's just like, that's why it feels artificially long to me, because it's like, well, then I don't...
Why'd you put that whole
You don't need
scene
these
in there?
really long missions in there, and I don't have to play Abby that much in order to feel empathetic to her. Like, you already got that out of me in the first half of the game. I don't then need to play this whole arc of her chasing Tommy when I kind of already know where it's going from playing Ellie's side of the story. And I don't know if that's kind of a bad job in directing that certain part of the game, because if you're going to frame it like that, then maybe stop just short of Ellie killing those people and then switch to Abby. So I don't know what's going to happen yet, right? But
or maybe don't have your entire story be this like Greek tragedy where the bodies start piling up on the stage.
Like literally everybody dies, and it's just okay. Well, what I call this? There's not enough giraffe moments in this game.
Zebra moments?
Famously in the first game, which the first game is, I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff that happens in the game, but there's these moments sprinkled in, famously where you get to pet this giraffe.
Ellie tells her jokes.
There's these moments sprinkled in that kind of make it all worth it, going through all this horrific stuff, and there's none of that for me here in this game. It's just one bad thing after the other, and there's...
Oh, the beautiful moments are like the moments
museum
where you get the flashbacks, but it's like, well, those are in the past, so you
and
like don't
care
about the future.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's like there's just too much feeling in the past. It's not enough to like fuel your anger to continue
There's
on to go
just
through these
zero reward to kind of being with any of the characters.
Yeah.
Even though there is like 5 times as many characters as the first game.
Too many characters.
Like, which I didn't have that much of a problem with, but like they all die and nothing matters. And yeah, there's not enough. You need more giraffe moments. There needs to be just a few more moments of like, okay, I'm doing this horrific shit, but hey, you know what? It's worth it because of this little moment I had with this character, and there's none of that for me there.
And I actually really liked Abby connecting with Lev and Yara because
I love their connection. I just don't understand her like lack of connection with anyone else.
I took it as she's been trying to find like a community to be a part of ever since all the Fireflies got killed.
Right.
And she was kind of part of the Wolves, but now she's finding that through Lev and Yara. And one of my favorite quotes I wrote down is Abby saying to Lev, "You're my people." Like, I thought that was so sweet. And yeah, and also having the nightmares tie into that, like her nightmares reoccur even though she's killed Joel and she's gotten her revenge. Then she sees the kids in her nightmares and she's like, oh, I have to go save them. And then when her dad is finally alive in her dreams is when she's doing good things for others instead of getting revenge. That was done in a good way where it's like revenge is bad, but then the rest of the game, it just hammers it home to you like over and over, like, don't you get it? Revenge is bad. Like, it leads you down the wrong path.
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know that I got that
from
the
Ellie's
story.
point of view. Yeah, because that was all her character was like at the end, that's all she could be, is this like revenge-driven
Right.
person. And then it was just too over the top for me.
Well, and so talking about revenge, as the story unfolds and you get to know more and more of what happened between Ellie and Joel through these cutscenes, you find out that when Joel is killed, Ellie knows exactly why he's killed, because she knows this. We find out that she knows the secret by the time you already play her in the beginning. So why is it never brought up that she knows why these people are coming after Joel, and she knows that to a certain point it's justified? So why is that never brought up as part of her decision? It just turns into this, no, they killed Joel and I gotta go after them.
I don't know. I think that they do give you that when they show you the final scene with her, but I feel like they should have showed that scene earlier, where they show that like they were going to work on the relationship. So Abby robbed her of that. And I feel like that's where she's angry. Like the anger builds. It's just like they had finally discussed it and they were going to like start to work through it. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, or like that same, like the next time she saw him, he was dead. You know what I mean?
Before her and Tommy leave Jackson, it never seems to be part of the discussion of, hey, should we even do this? Because, hey, remember, Joel's kind of a piece of crap and he did do this, but it's never mentioned. Partly because then you can have that reveal later that Ellie kind of knows what's going on, maybe.
I'm sorry, I thought it was cheap. I think reducing a character that we love so much to she cannot exist outside of anger and hatred, that's not a normal state for your body to be in. That has like no.
You want to talk about kind of the final part of the game? So you were already checked out at this point, but there's a part where you find Abby and she's being held by basically what are modern day slave owners. They capture people and just work them to death, basically.
And which would have misbehave, they get turned into zombies.
A cool part of the story if we weren't already kind of mentally checked out from everything that happened before.
When your shock muscle wears out.
Yeah.
You can't keep reacting to the same thing over and over. You just go numb.
Right.
And that's why just adding more violence and saying, oh, it's a critique of violence is bad, that doesn't work as a critique. Mm-hmm. It just makes you numb to violence and normalizes it.
You find Abby at the end of the game, and she tried to escape from these people, and they hung her out by the ocean to basically die and roast in the sun. And Abby, she looks skinnier. Mm-hmm. Her like hair's cut off. It's just like, wow, like this person's been totally abused. And Ellie sees that and has this moment of like, she cuts Abby down. I maybe might have had still just a little part of me was rooting for Ellie to like kill this person, right? And I'm saying anything I had at that point was kind of lost because I'm like, oh wow, like this is almost worse than death. Like look at what she's been through, right?
But that's what it took for you. Like they had to inflict so much physical violence on Abby in the game for you to feel that way. I don't agree with that.
I don't know. I'm just saying from like Ellie's standpoint, where you see this person just who's totally degraded, and you're like, oh, this is like worse than me killing her. But then I want to get to the final fight scene, which is so ridiculous.
Like there has to be a boss battle.
Yeah, we have to have this. It's so unnecessary. You don't really need this last battle. Like even if it's the story they want to tell, you can do that without this ridiculous final battle where like they have no strength left, either of them, and Ellie decides to put down her backpack and even if she wants to kill Abby, instead of shooting her, decides, I'm gonna get in a fist fight with this. Like they're both on like the verge of falling over already. They're both injured, and it's just so unnecessary, and the fight it's just absolutely ridiculous. I was just going through the motions at that point. I'm like, okay, like, let me just get through this.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, if you want to kill her, really you're going to get in a fist fight?
Yeah.
Like, just shoot her if you're going to do that. Like, I don't...
So this actually brings me to my point about the Naughty Dog team hating anything to do with medical science. There's this absurd moment in the first game when Ellie finds a Band-Aid and it cures Joel from falling from a height and getting pierced through by a rusty metal rod. It's so absurd and ridiculous, but at least that serves a purpose of trying to bring Joel and Ellie back together. That complete disregard for the human body in this game just served of being able to add more and more violence into the game. It didn't serve a story purpose for me. It was just this really like sadistic thing. Like when that big guy is coming after you in that war zone and he just keeps fighting you and fighting you and you're slashing up his face and he keeps coming at you.
Yeah.
Like it felt like that scene from Atomic Blonde. That's almost like this game takes itself so seriously, but I was like, do you want me to laugh or do you want me?
There's these traces of Uncharted ridiculousness, which works really well in Uncharted because Uncharted is ridiculous, but it doesn't work in the context of this game, which just takes itself so incredibly serious. Then don't give me these absolutely ridiculous fights when everything else is so kind of harsh and to the point and gory. And then there's a couple of these fights that are just, it just makes no sense at all.
Like the first fight with Abby and Ellie, I thought was I did not like that at all. I thought that was a really bad decision.
Oh, you mean where they were fighting, but you're like fighting
in the
as
back
Abby?
of the theater?
Yeah.
I hated that scene. And at that point, I don't want anything to happen to Ellie still. So I'm like still not liking Abby. Having to play Abby fighting Ellie and hurting her. And I'm like, I don't want to fight her. But if you die, then you just have to start again.
So just to come back to the violence of that scene, it's not enough that you have these two characters inflicting more wounds on each other. Like Abby almost kills Dina. And then we can't leave it at that. We have to do a top-down shot of this pregnant woman, like, in her own blood, and Ellie, like, looking up at us. And that, to me, that last part in Santa Barbara was just that. Because we see, it just doesn't happen off-screen. We see Lev sustaining this horrible head injury that would basically kill him.
Yeah.
He gets knocked into the garage door. And we, like you said, we see Abby's body completely destroyed. So to me, it was just another chance to show us more violence on trans and female bodies, and then to suggest that all it takes is willpower to combat these like horrendous acts of violence inflicted on you and to engage us in this boss battle that is so medically impossible. Like I would have to be an alien in space playing this game, like not being familiar with human bodies to like have any emotional reaction to this. Like I just thought it was so absurd. It just asked a suspension of disbelief that I could not muster. And it was just an excuse for, exaggerated violence.
Well, all that aside, it just didn't work from a storytelling perspective to where after all this violence and all these people dying, what would have been a more brave choice would be for these two characters to finally have a dialogue, maybe like with Ellie holding her at gunpoint or something, right? Like, to dive deeper in these characters. Yeah. Because these characters are connected through how both their stories kind of intersect. They're not connected by ever kind of talking to each other, having any sort of dialogue. Just piling more and more action onto this game, like after a while, just gets kind of old.
Yeah, it becomes really boring. Yeah, and other examples of the medical stuff just really not working for me. I am not sure why we kept this game mechanic from the first one where you have to pop a million different pills that, the chemicals have long become inactive. And that's how you get like more health benefits in the game. I'm like, we couldn't have thought of something like different. And then also like the whole like amputated arm, but like she's fine.
Oh my god, like running through salt water with
like,
a freshly amputated arm.
And then we had like pregnant American Ninja Warrior. Like the whole scene with the Abby finding the first aid kit in the ambulance, I wanted it to cut back to Mel being like, did you read the list? I asked for like surgical tools. I asked for like a saw and like...
It's like scissors and like tweezers. It's like, what the hell are you going to do with
don't
that? Don't perform
surgeries in an ambulance.
I don't know. At that point in the apocalypse, you probably just take like a machete and slice the arm off, right? Like, I don't...
Well, you have to because Abby didn't get any of the things you asked for.
But so, the first game is widely regarded as basically a masterpiece by most people. And so, when you're making a sequel to that, I think it's really hard. And first of all, it's hard to follow up on a masterpiece. And I think it's really easy to fall into this trap that most sequels do, where it's like, okay, we have to follow up this amazing thing that we did. So, what that means is we just have to make it bigger and better and more violence. And it's a longer game. And to me, the second you do that, it just kind of fails. Like, you're never going to be you know, when Psy released Gangnam Style, you knew the next song that was going to come out wasn't going to be as good.
I love Daddy.
It's a great song, but it's not as good, right? I think it's an unrealistic expectation that you're going to make a better game. Again, to me, the game just feels artificially long to where it's almost twice as long as the first game. And it's just...
without meaning. Yeah.
Just because you make it bigger and there's more characters and more violence, like, that doesn't make the game better because that's not what was good about the first game. What was good about the first game is these characters and the storytelling, and you don't love the first game because, oh, it's really cool how you kill the zombies. Like, nobody gives a crap about that.
Right.
We care about these characters.
Well, it sounds like in the first game, like there was character development from start to finish. And in this one, I felt like there was no character development except for like with Abby.
Except
like,
for
Abby was the only
yeah.
one that like kind of evolved into a better person, but nothing happened with the one you cared about from the beginning. Like, I don't know. It was weird.
It's upsetting, honestly. And coming back to the playing in 10-hour chunks, I think it could have worked where you play like 10 hours as one character and 10 hours as the other if you actually have a story that I care about. But I think it's a really interesting storytelling tool because I love that kind of Love Actually stuff, you know, like when you're chasing Nora down in the hospital basement and then the soldiers drop down and they're like, why is the power on down here? And you're like, that's a weird comment, but then you forget about it. And then you're like, oh, the power's on because I'm right there with Abby and I just spent all this time trying to turn the power on, like in the ambulance section. Like, that's cool storytelling.
Yeah,
you just need a story to tell.
There's all kinds of other little things I missed, like the dog you pet as Ellie is the same. I totally missed that it's the exact same dog. I thought it was just a generic dog.
Oh, really? That's another thing that I couldn't get into Abby's story because I'm like, oh, great. Now there's this dog that I know I already killed.
Yeah.
Like, the game, honestly, it lost me when it tried to make me complicit in Nora's torture. I'm like, do I really have to press the square button? Like,
well, so do you want to talk about a little bit about script doctoring, like what you would have done different, maybe?
Like Stacy already said, the humor, the charm, and the hope, they're all sacrificed for melodrama. You know, and it feels like this Game of Thrones, like, introduce a character, kill a character, and then you expect like a oh, aren't we so bold for killing that character? And I'm like, no, it's not bold. It's
especially
boring.
after there's nothing more bold that you can do than
Killing
Joel, which you already did in the beginning. So there's nothing that's going to compare to that. You don't need to kill all these other people because there's no shock effect after you've already done the most shocking thing you could have possibly done.
It's just morbid, killing that poor pregnant woman, and like I'm like, I don't want to be part of this. Like,
right.
Coming back to Uncharted 4, which is called A Thief's End, when we played it, the whole game we were like, who's gonna die? Somebody's gonna die. Like, it's gonna be the brother, it's gonna be Nate, and like nobody dies, and the game is better for it. And at the end, you're just like on the beach exploring the house and finding all these artifacts from your journey and reliving the whole franchise. And it's such a meaningful, beautiful moment. And I'm like, why couldn't we have that, you know, in this game where it's like maybe you do start with Joel's death, but then Ellie and Abby have to work together to save Lev and Yara, or like there's other immune people, or they have to, or maybe the whole game is getting to Catalina and, you know, helping Abby find the fireflies, and then having Ellie's life mean something by helping Abby, like actually going back to that theme of like trying to find a cure, like why not? And then have these characters, like you said, actually like work together and be like the player knows they're very similar, but have these two characters actually realize, oh, we are very similar and we should.
Well, and so I found it weird. They made this really detailed version of Seattle, yet the only place I get to go is like the hospital, the aquarium, like over and over again, right?
I like that. I didn't mind
really?
it. Yeah, I didn't mind it.
It seemed just a little repetitive. It's like, okay, I just made it to the hospital with Ellie. Now I got to do it again with Abby. And we're just stuck in Seattle for a little too long.
Too long, yeah.
I actually like the whole twist at the end in Santa Barbara where you find these people that are slave owners. And I think you could have done more with that to where maybe we don't spend as much time in Seattle, and maybe you do kill all of Abby's friends, and she somehow gets to escape, and then you do track her down in Santa Barbara, and maybe Ellie and Abby both get captured, and now they have to work together to kind of escape
That's
these
still too dark for
slave
me.
owners. There's more creative ideas you could have done, especially if you want these two characters' stories to intersect constantly.
Yeah.
You kept saying throughout like playing it that it felt like two different people wrote like the starting part and then the second half. And I definitely felt that from start to finish, because in the first half I like really was caring about everybody, and then
And it
all of a
was
sudden
funny.
I just
It, like stopped being funny.
yeah, and then all of a sudden it was like it just
It was weird when all these reviews came out when the game was launched, and some of them justified and some of them not justified. The people that are just upset about Joel, or the people that don't like the queer community, or like. But you first start playing the game and you're like, I don't know, 5-10 hours in, and you're like, what's all the fuss about? Like, this game's really cool. And then as you get more into the game, like, okay, like I get it.
Yeah.
This game just kind of falls apart halfway through.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up a review by Carolyn Petit. By the end, I just wanted to get done with it so I can read her review. I love her stuff. And one of her quotes was, "This game is such an asshole," which I thought was so funny. She also says that the game defines characters solely by their trauma, which is something we already mentioned. And also that the game's insistence on savagery feels really stubborn and ignorant. Like it can't get out of its own way and actually tell a story. And then she also brought up all the letters that you find in the story. They have no nuance. They just serve to drive home the point of like, isn't this world just dark and terrible? And I'm like, yes, I already know that. I don't need to pick up 20 letters of like, I had to kill my whole family and then I killed myself.
As
And
Stacy and I are playing, or Stacy's watching me play, that just became, every time I was about to pick up a letter, I would like try to predict the first
yeah,
sentence.
they're all the same.
Half the time it's like, I'm trapped, or I can't make it anymore. It's like everything was like the same.
Like what happened to the letters from the first game where you find the ship and it's like Ish the sea captain and he's made this whole community in the sewers and you're like, I want to hear more about Ish. Like no nuance. It's just the
there
same
was just like
thing.
that whole scene in the aquarium where they're talking about the father and he lost the kids to they became scars, and I thought that
nice.
maybe that was going to interconnect at
Me
one point
too.
with Yari and Lev, and then it just like that was it.
No, I thought the same thing.
I'm like,
what
okay, like, can you? I want the letters to have a purpose, and they just don't.
Yeah.
Well, I forget the detail because there's something where happens where like one of the wolves kills another. Do you remember what that
the
was?
dad is just trying to be neutral, and then the kids run away to the scars because they're like, "Oh, dad is such a coward," where dad just wants to live in peace.
The mom got killed by a wolf,
and the kids want to take revenge.
I know, but I forget. There's something that happens right after that with one of the wolves, where that's when you thought it was gonna.
Yeah,
like
there were several
intersect.
points where I thought there was going to intersect, and I'm like,
nope.
But it like never. It's like you read these stories, but they don't tell anything. It's just like, oh, and you just hear Ellie saying her quotable line. What was it?
Shit.
Like,
oh shit! Yeah.
Oh, that's really bad.
After every letter. Oh wow. Yeah, it would either be someone getting trapped and locking the door, but there's zombies outside, or somebody trying to get some sort of supplies for their significant other and then getting trapped.
And everybody dies. Like,
the only purpose of the letters at all I found was when we could find like a safe, like the gate number or something like that. Like other than that, they had no purpose, no significance, and I was just like, I kept wanting them to, and I feel like they missed the boat on that one because they should have like. They could have tied that into like the story more.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the safe puzzles? Because I kind of liked them. I kind of liked having to find
over them because I had to. There was no way for it to easily just pop up. You had to switch between your journals. So I started writing it down on paper. And if I have to have a pad of paper next to me while I'm playing a game, like
that was my major complaint. Where there was no way to like bookmark certain notes, or if you find the code, maybe Ellie should just write it in her notebook, because there was times where I find the note that has the code to the safe, and then I find like 4 more notes, and by the time I get to the safe, I'm like, okay, which note was this code in? It's just meh. That was a weird mechanic to the game. How did you feel about the puzzles in general? I mean, light puzzles where you kind of have to figure out like putting the trash can on the ramp and then pulling the gate up. So
Yeah, that took me so long.
Oh, really?
And then finally, and there's even a sign right next to it that's like rolling things. Like, no, I like those.
There's
I
a
thought those
couple
were
of those
fun.
puzzles.
I got really tired of trying to open doors that wouldn't open.
Oh my god.
That was a little
by the
frustrating.
end,
I
was
didn't
like,
understand that.
Don't make there be a triangle. if I
Or
can.
my favorite is when they're in the aquarium and Abby has the keys, yet there's still a locked door, and I don't open the locked door. I'm like, she has the keys are right in her pocket.
To me, the worst offender is you're with Abby, and it's right before you run into the whole Tommy sniper scene, and there's this little shop on the pier, and the door is locked, and literally a foot left to the door is just the shop window, and you climb through it. And I'm like, what is the point?
Why did you make me click on the door?
What is the point of the locked door here? Like, sometimes it was just so unnecessary that the door was locked. Are you okay with opening all the drawers in the game? The millions of drawers?
It was fine, but it's a lot.
little much sometimes. Just dial it back, maybe like 20% less drawers.
I wanted to come back to Dina for a second.
Yeah, please.
I don't know why
My-
they wouldn't let you open the car doors or the refrigerator. It's like you
The
have these
refrigerator?
huge...
There's nothing in these refrigerators. In
That
this
the
one.
refrigerators are never opened, not once throughout the
If you
entire
want to hide
game.
anything, put it in
In
the
the
refrigerator.
fridge because they don't look in there.
It's so funny.
So what about Dina? I think she's my favorite character.
Well, she's
by
the
way.
best character. She's
Yeah.
the only one who's like a grown up. Her and Jesse probably. She has this quote when you're in the synagogue that I really loved. She says, "I like coming from a long line of survivors."
Yeah.
I thought that was really
That was
lovely.
nice.
And also, when she asks Ellie if she can get anything out of Joel's house for her, she sees Ellie like struggling to open the door. I was like, oh, she's like so nice. And then the other scene where I literally screamed was when Ellie breaks her mask and Dina doesn't even hesitate. Like, she knows at this point she's pregnant and she's about to take her mask off. And she's like, we can share mine. I was like, no, don't take it off. Like, I was like screaming, and I was like, damn, Dina is like committed. Like, she's mature.
Well, I feel like Jesse's the same way.
Jesse's the same way.
I was very upset when he died. He was actually one of the ones where I cared about. And just from start to finish, like, he's so selfless about their relationship and like, their friendship.
This could have easily been like the jealous boyfriend.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
they could have taken it so many ways, but he was just such like a well-designed, like well-built person, and it was crushing to me when he died. But
Yeah.
Yeah, so Dina is like the most fleshed out character who just encapsulates Ellie with her love, like no questions asked. And they haven't even, I mean, they just started dating like 2 days ago, right?
And
they've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
Like, they've been friends.
But their dialogue too when they're down that weed factory, and it's so awkward and so like how teenagers
it's
talk.
so, like, encapsulates
Charming.
the teenage experience perfectly.
Well, fuck all that. Everything sucks. The rest of the game is dark abyss. Yeah, my next note in here was actually about Lev. Lev is a character who happens to be trans. Lev is not the trans character. And I think that's something we saw in the past with women in video games, where it's like, well, we only need to put one woman in here because that's her personality. Like, she's defined by her femininity. She has boobs and she likes shopping, and like that's. And I feel like that's how we. A lot of the times, that's how we depict trans people in media today. And this game did not do that, which I really appreciate. You know, Lev was a fully fledged character with motivations and so forth.
Normal emotions.
But what I really didn't like, and I think this is going to really date itself, I still had to be exposed to acts of aggression towards Lev because he was trans. And Hollywood is still doing this, but just imagine if, like, Lev was a black character and I constantly had to hear like racial slurs being, you would be like, oh, really? This is so over the top and silly.
I see what
And
you're
like,
saying, yeah.
trans people are already living this trauma in their real lives. Do they really need something like as badly as them using female pronouns and also using his dead name over and over again of saying, Lily, like, you're an abomination, we're gonna kill you. I'm like, do I really need to hear this like over and over? I just don't think we're there yet where we can just let trans people be trans people without framing them through their...
Well, I mean, with everything
their
that's
struggle.
going on...
Do they struggle? Yeah.
I don't know. With everything that's going on right now, like, I feel like some video gamers really kind of need because a lot of them experience the world through this, and it was nice to see a compassion and like, I don't know, like there was like the sister who was like at first was like, can't you just decide not to be this? And then there was Abby, who just immediately was like accepting of it. I don't know. I think there was different layers, which I thought was good to expose people.
Is it a step in the right direction, though? You
definitely.
That's kind of like
especially for a game this huge. It's really big. But hopefully 10 years from now we're gonna look back on this and it's gonna be like that. That's all I was gonna say.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that it's these steps that make it so that we can get to the next one, because I feel like it's better than where we were even a year ago. Like, would a year ago this character even be in there? Would this even be a subplot? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if it would have been, especially in the gaming world.
And kudos for Naughty Dog for putting all this stuff in a game that's gonna be hugely popular. And if you just know the gaming community, like, they're not the most tolerant people, a lot of them. And
well, they were like upset and throwing a fit. Yeah. Neil Druckmann has that story about when you play at the end of Uncharted 4 and you're the daughter, like these testers were throwing a fit because they're like, not you too, Naughty Dog, you're making me play as a woman, like Nathan Drake should have had a son. It's like,
oh my god, yeah, because you have to play a woman in so many games. It's so silly.
Yeah. And like these gamer gators pretend like women just being women is like this huge ask of us.
I'm going to tell you right now, I think my favorite thing about watching this game was the fact that there was women in there with muscles. There's so many of these movies where these women are supposed to be these like badass characters, and they have these young actresses playing them that don't even have like definition in their arms, and it's like so frustrating. And right now it's like the first time in Hollywood where you're seeing muscles, and it's like these 40-year-old women playing, you know,
Charlize.
and it's Charlize all the way, man. And like every time I watch you guys play these video games, it's like always these like seductive outfits and these big breasts
old titties
and these big ass booties, but there's like not a muscle on them, and they're doing all these things that I'm like, dude, I work out 5 to 6 days a week and I can't do that. So tell me how you're doing that when you don't have any muscle definition in any way. So it was really, really nice to see like different types of strong, but still be strong, because like Ellie's not super,
she's more wiry.
She's like more wiry, but there's still muscle definition. You can tell that she's like farm strong, you know what I mean? And then there's Abby, who you could tell like lifts, and she's like, and she's got these arms, and they keep like reacting to her, like building like
a joke. It's not like, oh, she's so mannish.
No, she's still perceived
like the
as
alpha
feminine
in her group.
Yeah, but she's still perceived as feminine. She's still like
beautiful.
Looked at in a beautiful way, and like it was really refreshing to see that in a video game. And I think that I wish that it was more out there than it is, but it's nice to see that development starting to occur.
I was trying to look more stuff up about Abby and what was the writing process for her, and I had a really hard time finding anything because
it was so secretive.
Because it was so secretive, and even the interviews after the game is released with the director and the writer, so much of the interviews just focuses on Ellie and Joel, and there really isn't much I could find about what was their process for like fleshing out Abby. But in the process of me looking up stuff about her, it came across, of course, these stupid ass Reddit threads, and it was just these gamers going, oh, like, women can't even be that muscular, and it's so stupid, like, without steroids. And I'm like, that's not true at all.
You can look up the body model of this on Instagram. She exists. So.
Yeah, and there's plenty of strong women. And
there are women that are born with bigger frames, and they can absolutely look like this without the use of steroids. Now, is there enough food in this apocalyptic world to keep fueling those muscles? I don't know, but it's just such a dumb complaint. You're like, well, women can't look like that. And it's like, what are you talking about?
There are lots of women that look like that.
And I also love how in the game when you're in the flashback and you tell Owen in the aquarium, like, oh, I can lift this much now. There's no like toxic masculinity. Owen doesn't feel threatened. Owen's like, okay, can we make out and do it now? Because you're so hot to me. Like, I love that.
In so many other games, if there is a strong female, then it always has to be this thing of where that character has to prove themselves against the men. And it's just the women in this game are just allowed to be just normal people. And it's okay that they are who they are. And there doesn't have to be this point made about, I'm a strong woman, I can do it too. It's like,
I grew up with 6 brothers.
yeah, there's just no questioning that, like, yeah, it's cool, like, you can do it, whatever, this is who this character is, and we don't have to have a whole discussion about it in 2020 that you can do it. It's just, again, especially in the beginning of this game, that these characters are so fleshed out and brought to life, and they're able just to be normal human beings. That obviously falls apart later in the game, but in the beginning of the game, you really feel that.
I wanted to say one more thing about that dinosaur museum.
Yeah.
Where it really has...
Oh, that was
I
so
didn't know
good.
that was the scene where they put all the charm and humor and we were never going to get it again when I was playing it. But I've never seen a tutorial done that way. That was amazing. That was like a swimming tutorial.
Yeah.
And also... Ellie foolishly jumping into that puddle is, of course, a mirror to Abby jumping from the Ferris wheel. You know, it's
Right.
like these two things connecting. And I was like, that's really smart. And also, when Ellie throws Joel in the water, he's like, aren't you angry and upset? And he's like, yes, I'm very angry and upset. Like, it was just so cute, like that relationship. The like, and it's her birthday and all the father-daughter stuff.
That
and
scene in that little space shuttle where he gives her the tape and everything kind of goes black. It's so well done.
I also loved her being on the phone and being like, oh, all the dinosaurs are busy right now. Hold on. There's one right here. And then Joel comes around the corner.
What happened to
What
that?
happened?
These are the giraffe moments I'm talking about.
Yeah, there was 2.
I need more. So they're getting ready to release PlayStation 5, and just as we're phasing out PlayStation 4, I'm just glad that Naughty Dog finally found a good way to use that stupid touch control section of the PlayStation 4 controller, which works beautiful with playing the guitar. So the game forces you to play the guitar a couple times, but then you can pick up the guitar again and
No,
play
I didn't
more
do that.
songs. Did you do any of that?
I did keep clicking on the guitar to put it back in its case, and Ellie refused to do that. I'm like, okay, so you find this perfect guitar in this case, and you're like, fuck it. Like, I'm just gonna leave it out to the elements.
Yeah. It's kind of cool that you can like play these other songs if you pick it up again, but I was trying to get through the game so I can do this podcast with you.
And I think also that scene with Ellie playing the guitar in the store, and then I think it's Dina sits on the floor and she's just watching Ellie.
Yeah.
And that moment to me was like, oh, I can feel the gamer gators rage at like, they're not just exposing me to like lesbian relationships, but they're normalizing it and they're making me a part of it. And like Dina's looking at Ellie in this super loving way. I can just see them like foaming at the mouth, like.
I definitely thought they did the scenes between Ellie and Ellie and Dina really well, like really, really well. Just the undressing scenes where like she's got the injuries.
Oh, Dina.
Yeah, she's got the injuries and just like the whole interaction with that was like done so well, and it was done beautifully, and it was normalized, and it wasn't sexualized, and it was just that was brilliant.
Which the scene where they have the dance in the barn, there's that shop owner who then yells hateful things at this lesbian couple, and I just thought for once I would like to see a non-old white guy yell hateful things. Not funny?
I don't know. That's their MO.
It's always old white guys.
Well, I kind of wish it was an old white woman for once, because that's what we're dealing with now.
Yeah, like a Karen.
Like a Karen.
Yeah.
Can we have there's no way only old white people feel hateful things.
As we see from all these gamer gators playing their video games.
That was just my funny take on it.
What I also really loved about them dancing while Dina's doing the dishes, Dina's just wearing these like high-waisted jeans and she looks like, a smoke show.
Babe.
Like, it's not like a game where like the zombies attacking you and your clothes are getting shredded apart and your boobs are falling out.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was
It's
talking about. Just like you can be beautiful, but not have to be have triple Ds. There's different body shapes in it, and they're all perceived as beautiful. It's nice. It's very refreshing.
Yeah.
And kind of to go to the technical aspect of that, there's a picture online that shows the actress that plays Dina and then what she looks like in the game, and it just looks the exact same.
No, they used a different face model.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking. The face model.
The face model.
It just looks like it's just amazing.
I know the one for
level of
Abby is
detail.
like, oh my god, it's the same person. Like what we are able to accomplish is
there's some great pictures online, because there's everything is just motion captured for this game, which is part, they have the budget to do that, and it's part of why the game looks so amazing. Like, there's a picture of all these dogs in these really tight motion capture suits.
They put the dogs
Oh, it
in
looks
that?
hilarious. But that's why the dog animation is so amazing.
I did not know that.
There's also where I guess it's called the Rat King, which I didn't know. The really big monster in the basement of the hospital, I guess it's called the Rat King. You need to look up how they did the motion capture for that. They literally tied 3 actors together.
Whoa.
And one of the actors is like upside down hanging over the shoulder of the other 2 actors.
That's
because
really cool.
it's just this like contorted monster. It just looked insane how they did that.
Yeah, about the monsters, actually, because they call the new mutations shamblers, and they talk about zombies migrating.
Yeah.
There's a book called Dread Nation, which is amazing, which is about the Civil War, but it's zombies.
Huh.
And they call the zombies shamblers in that, and there's a whole plot about zombie migration. So I was like, did they just steal that
interesting.
from like
Maybe.
the book? Like, I don't know.
I hate those little creepers. Were they in the first game?
They were in the extended in
Oh my
Ellie's
God.
story. Yeah.
This game, legit, like, I could only play it so much at a time. It was just giving me anxiety. It's like all the little creepy noises and like, I hate the little creepers coming after me.
That's where I would scream.
I just really love the tutorials through game experience.
Yeah.
Which is something Uncharted did as well, where you'll walk up on an encounter and then Dina will say, like, we don't have to do this, we can skip this. Or like, you don't know where to go, and somebody will be like, what's up that way? And instead of like text popping up or having like the golden trail from Fable, or like, it's so like in the game and makes you feel a little less stupid if you're stuck, because it's almost like your characters are part of the... I just love that. I think it's really smart.
So is it a worse game because we know like what Naughty Dog is capable of? Like, if we didn't have that precedent, would it just be more like, oh, like this game was almost like really cool, but the story kind of falls apart?
No,
Or-
I like it more because I know it's Naughty Dog, and because I know there's so much that went into it. And
yeah.
like, I could not play this game again. Like, we're selling it, and I'm very, very like sad about that, because the gameplay is so beautiful, and I would want to play this over and over and find all the cards and like find all the things. But
To me, it's more of a letdown because like I know what Naughty Dog is capable of, and the last few games they've released are just absolutely amazing, right? And you have that expectation going in.
If it wasn't Naughty Dog, I would just be like, oh, this is just another stupid, like, whatever. And, I would have just dismissed it. And here I wanted to really hang on, and I really tried, but I just couldn't.
Well, and there's nothing confirmed. I mean, there's rumors they'll make a third one. I honestly hope they kind of just move on from this and not just keep cranking out sequels to Uncharted and Last of Us, and maybe just try something new and let's explore, something else. And it's also like, the first Last of Us came out when everybody was obsessed with zombie storytelling, and it's like, now that you're playing the second game in 2020, you're like, oh yeah, that's right, we're still on this zombie thing in this game.
But I think it only feels like that because this game makes it more about the zombies and the world, and the first game, that was just the backdrop.
Yeah, true.
It was more about like, Ellie and Joel and Tommy and Marlene and...
Right. I'm just saying, a third game, you probably have it in 2025. Like, I don't really want to play a zombie game in 2025. I think I'm ready for something new from
You don't
Naughty
want to
Dog.
pick up any more pills, and...
I think I'm ready for something new. They're just so amazing over there that I would just kind of like to see them explore something else at this point. But I don't know. I mean, would you like to see a third game? How would you feel about that?
Playing as like Lev,
I don't know.
Catalina, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that, or the little kid growing up. I don't know.
Oh, Jesse Joel.
Yeah. Right, but I mean, would you like to see a third game maybe in the same universe with just different character? Like, do you want to stay in this world, or are you
Not
like...
if it's this sad.
Right.
Let's do something new.
Or just something where you have to just build up Jackson more, and I don't know.
The Sims Last of Us.
Sims Last of Us. You have to defend, like, Stronghold Last of Us.
Stardew Valley Last of Us. Stronghold.
Like, I'm totally ready for a new Uncharted game. I am not... And even if this game was as good as the first one, I still don't know if I would like a third one. Like, if this is such... There's only so much emotional stuff you can do with these characters. I think you just have to kind of move on at a certain point, no? Like, I'm ready to play Nathan Drake's daughter in Uncharted 5. Like, let's do this, man.
Well, yeah, and Uncharted did that trick of empathy through playing a character where you're playing as Sam through the whole prison escape. So you never think about doubting that was like a made-up story because you're like, I played it, like I was there. And this game took that and tried to run with it, and it just didn't always work.
It's too bad. I mean, yeah, there's so much I like about the game, and then there's so much I just don't like about it.
It's very hot and cold.
Very hot and cold. But, yeah, anything else you want to add?
That's it. Justice for Dina.
Justice for Dina.
And the baby.
And the baby.
Man, poor Dina.
Had that nice 2-story farm that she always dreamed of, and had to go move back to Jacksonville because...
I honestly was hoping Dina would just find somebody else, and then Ellie comes back, and Dina's like, no, get the hell out of here. You made your decision to leave. I was kind of sad that the house was just totally empty. Was
that like a good ending for you? To me, it was just more sadness. Like, oh, her fingers are cut off. She's leaving the guitar behind. Like,
it's like everyone's dead. Her relationship is shot, and now you can't even play the guitar anymore. It's like awesome.
Like,
everything sucks.
It's a very depressing ending.
Like, at least take the guitar with you, for God's sake. I don't know. Almost would have been better if Ellie doesn't come back at all and just moves on with her life. The fact that she comes back to the farmhouse, is she expecting Dina to be there? Like, no.
I just don't know what that whole thing was. Like, what was the point of it? So that you could see that Dina already told her she wasn't going to take her back. Yeah. If you leave, we're done. And then she still came back to the farm. Like, why was that whole scene necessary?
Honey, I'm home.
Honey?
It was another way to introduce the last scene with her and Joel.
You could have just done that flashback after the final fight, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's me. It's blah.
Okay, we're done here.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Again, find us on Instagram and Twitter. Handle is @ModernLifePod, and we would love to hear from you. Email is modernlifepod@gmail.com. This has been the Modern Life Podcast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Bye.
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 How's that feel?
Refreshing.
Yeah, it's not nice getting pushed in, is it?
Well, actually, we need to swim through this part anyway.
I got you back. You're angry and upset.
I'm very angry and upset. Now, come on.